I hope everyone is doing good today. And I wish all of you a very good morning to one and all present here, to all my participants. My name is Shimon of MACJ of Arts in Communication and Journalism.
Hello. Hello, Sunanda madam. Hello, madam.
Hello.
Madam, yes, madam. Madam, good morning.
Good morning.
Actually, we are having some network issues, so please bear with us.
Okay, no.
Yes. It will be sorted out in 2 minutes.
Okay, okay.
My apologies once again for the inconvenience. Can you hear me, Dr. Sunanda?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, good. Sorry about that. As I continuing, before
Okay.
we get to Dr. Sunanda's speech, I would like to just start by quoting, if culture was a house, language will be the key. Language will be the key to the front door to all the rooms inside. A quote by Khalid Hosseini. Language is one of the most important of any culture around the world. So today, the Indian Constitution recognizes 22 major languages of India and what is known as the 8th schedule of the Constitution. Yeah, as I'm continuing. It is, by the way, which people communicate with one another, build relationships, and create a sense of belonging in a form of a community. India is the home to a very large number of languages around, from the south to the north, from the east to the west. In fact, so many languages and dialects are spoken in India that it is often described as a museum of languages. The language diversity is by all means very baffling. In popular parlance, it is often described as the linguistic pluralism. Unfortunately, though, there are such times when a language dies, it's something it is irreplaceable. In the course of time, some of the minor dialects and languages have lost identity. Such languages are assimilated into other developed languages, like as all know, Hindi. It is important, as to say, to preserve the languages as a responsible for the development of culture of the community. In recent years, the language diversity is under threat. Speakers of diverse languages are becoming nowadays more rare, and major languages are being adopted and are abandoning all the other mother tongues of the states and so forth. The problem needs to be addressed at a societal level to which communities have to take part. Conservation of language diversity that is part of the cultural wealth. Now, I invite to convey our symposium Dr. Sangeeta Mohanty to introduce our guest for the plenary session.
नहीं वो नहीं नहीं
Our speaker for the plenary session, the role of language in cultural diversity. We have with us Dr. Sunanda Mahajan, the eminent personality who has contributed a lot for the language to make us to know about the language diversities and the various language to be continuing with us in order to have our culture, in order to have the recognition of India. Actually, through our feeling and get connected with us, and that creates a strong bond among the Indians, and that is the way of Indianize the things. So I would like to introduce all of you Dr. Sunanda Mahajan, who is a retired professor from Savitribai Phule University. At the time of retirement, she designated as a professor of German and head of the department. She is working as editor as well as translator for Kelvane Bhashantar, a Marathi translation quarterly co-conceptualized and co-founded in 1999. She has published national and international journals and books on German literature, comparative literature, translation studies. She has written a book in Marathi specially for Marathi readers, students, and academicians entitled Kolikasya Kabita is published in 2006. She has overall 35 years of experience of working as a translator. She has translated 8 books from German into Marathi and published by Continental Prakashan Pune since 2006. I welcome Dr. Sunanda Mahajan to our symposium and to address the gathering over here and to enlighten us regarding the various the role of language in the existing of the cultural diversities. Over to Dr. Sunanda Mahajan, madam.
Thank you, Dr. Mohanty. It was very kind. This much introduction is actually not required. Thank you very much. And before I start with my speech, I would like to thank the organizing committee, Dr. Mohanty and Dr. Prashant Dharmadhikari, who for inviting me and to have interaction with the young students. As she mentioned, as Dr. Mohanty mentioned, I retired in 2019. And after I retired, actually next year, the Corona crisis started. And I really did not have any opportunity to interact with the younger people. So this is the very good opportunity, though online. Very happy today for having me invited here. And I would like to mention at the beginning that I belong to the unskilled section of the teachers, because I am not very much comfortable with this online mode. But I will try and let us see how it works. So if I have any problem with the network, it will take me 2 or 3 minutes to log in from another laptop. So please bear with me. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. So should I start now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
And am I audible enough?
Yes, yes.
Yes, ma'am, you're
completely
audible. Please continue.
Thank you. Yes, right from the childhood, we have learned that there is unity in diversity in our country. We are one country, but we have diversity as far as traditions, customs, socio-political histories, religions, sects, culinary habits, languages, literature, music, art, and so on are concerned. Encompassing all these elements, we can say that we are multicultural. We have cultural diversity. For example, our wedding ceremonies are different depending on the state, depending upon religion. We cook and we eat differently. Some of us eat appam and dosa and rasam. Some prefer to have sarson ka saag and makai ki roti. Some are happier with puran poli, and some of us love fish, or some of us love to have tamda and pandhra rasa. So in some states, Diwali is celebrated, in some states, Durga Puja, or in some states, Onam is more elaborate. Maharashtra is fortunate to have in its past the king like Shivaji Maharaj. When you visit, for example, Sarnath near Varanasi, you are excited to see Ashok Stamba there, preserved in that museum, who was one of the mightiest rulers in ancient India. You would hear a very special Ravindra Sangeet when you visit Shantiniketana. And apart from different gharanas in music, we also have different types of classical dance like Kathak, Kathakali, Kuchipudi, Manipuri, Bharatnatyam, and so on. And as we know, we have different languages with their multifaceted, multidimensional literatures, films, and theater. So India is a multicultural society, but we are also multilingual society, where more than one language are spoken even in a smaller section of city.
Miss, are you there? Can you hear us? You've cut out, ma'am.
But there were small states, smaller units with different rulers. During the period of British colonization and after 1947, the country India emerged in today's form. We know that after independence, our republic was made out of different states. While making the states, the main criteria was the common language spoken in that particular state. There were some exceptions, but largely we can say that these states were made primarily on the basis of language, which also has administrative purposes, of course. Though each state speaks largely one language as state language, there are again different dialects, bolis. For example, when you have the example of Maharashtra, there is standard Marathi, which we speak, or which we read in the newspapers, or which we hear in the news on television or radio, or the school books, or textbooks are, for example, printed in that Praman Bhasha. Hello?
Welcome back, Miss. Seems you must have had a network problem.
I'm sorry.
It's okay,
I'm
ma'am.
very sorry.
Please do
Yeah.
continue, though.
Okay, I'll just repeat one or two sentences so that you can get the point. Today, I'm going to talk about language, about the role of language or languages in cultural communication and in the country with cultural diversity. I would elaborate on the following points. What is language? Connection between language and culture. Role of language in the multilingual and multicultural country like India, and language and translation. Perhaps you know that language is a tool of communication, something which only humans have. The primary function of language is communication. We know that the animal world, right from big animals to very small insects, they also have a kind of language that is code, we can say, and they communicate with each other, but it is only for their basic needs. Human brains developed languages across the globe. Each language is a very complex system with the help of which not only its speakers achieve basic communication, but they can speak and listen, read and write, code and decode messages. And thus the communication does not have actually any boundaries. And now we know with the help of technology, we can really have communication at the very large scale. We can read what our ancestors have written in the caves or on the rocks, Shila Lake, the way it is called, and that it shows that the two individuals have communication with each other, not only in the present, but language connects you with the past, with the ancestors, and it gives you vision of the future. Let us see how this communication takes place with the help of language. The language is made of sounds. Sounds make the words and words make sentences. Sentences are usually considered as the units of communication. The words have specific meanings. For example, when I say the Pune city has two rivers, Mula and Mutha, I don't show you here rivers, or I don't take you to the rivers when I talk about them. What I do, I use the word, the signs, river, sign made of sound, which has a fixed meaning, and that indicates or signifies a river in the reality. The word two indicates the quantity or number. The words Pune, Mula, and Mutha, they are proper nouns, as we know, and they have fixed meanings and contents, and they indicate nothing else but only Pune, Mula, and Mutha respectively. Whereas the word river can be used to indicate any other river like Jamuna, Nile, Amazon, and so on. When I say fixed meaning, you may ask, who fixed this meaning to the given word, to the given sound? And why this particular order or sequence of the sounds? Why river? Why not erwir, for example? So the answer to this question will be the sounds and the sequence of sounds is totally arbitrary. And the meaning attached to it is actually also arbitrary. That is why the speakers of English language say river. In Marathi, it is nadi. In German, it is Fluss. In Chinese, it could be something else. But all have similar meaning, and all these words indicate rivers in the reality. But at the same time, these arbitrary words are used conventionally with the same meaning and form from one generation to the next generation. It is passed on. So the speakers go on using this particular word with the particular meaning, and that is how the meaning gets fixed to the sequence of sounds, which is word. This is a very simple example actually to tell you how words are signs and they indicate or signify things in the reality. The language is a complex structure of the signs. They stay in specific connection with each other. They have a particular structure. There are rules of grammar. There are rules how the sentences are formed, how the words are pronounced, when and how to use different tenses to indicate past, present, and future. There are rules for conjugation and declination. There are rules for everything in the language, but they keep changing. All the rules keep changing. The rules seem to be rigid, but they are not. Because we, the speakers of the language, change ourselves. Our life changes. It keeps on changing, and so our language. The language evolves with us. So, okay, we will revise this once in different words. Human language is a system of signs. The signs have meaning or content, and they are connected with each other. Some signs have definite grammatical function. Words are signs and sentences are units of communication. Language is a complex structure of signs and their meanings and functions. The language signs or linguistic signs, as far as the sequence of sounds and meaning are concerned, they are arbitrary. That is, form and content are arbitrary, but at the same time conventionally fixed with given meaning and function. So the language is closely connected with the life of the speakers. They use language to describe their reality, surroundings, experiences, emotions. The speakers argue, they love, they fight, they write poetry, they think with the help of language. Naturally or logically, the surroundings of the speakers reflect in their language. Their geography and history, climate, they are all reflected in their language. For example, in Marathi, there is no word for snow. We have borrowed the words from Urdu or Hindi, barf, and from Sanskrit, hima. Why is it so? Because in our surrounding, the snow or ice is only in the fridge. But I have heard that in the Scandinavian languages, there are many words for snow. For example, in the Icelandic language, there was some project and survey was done for that particular project. So this survey says that there were around 46 words for different types of snow. Similarly, in Scottish language or in Norwegian language, there are many words to indicate snow or indicate types of snow. But in Maharashtra, there is no snow, so there is no word for it, because Maharashtra is called Dagad Dhondyancha Desh, where the temperature never goes below 0 degree. Forget about having own words for snow, one had to borrow the word from other languages. Thus, we understand that the language of any society reflects its climate, geography, history, traditions, habits, customs, thoughts, and philosophy. So we collect here a few points again. Basic function of any language is communication. Language is a complex system of science. Language evolved with the history of its speakers and is closely connected with the surroundings of its speakers. We go further and say what actually Ferdinand de Saussure, a very famous Swiss linguist who is considered as the father of modern linguistics, stated at the beginning of 20th century. He actually named sign language as science. That is what he said. And he said that language is a social phenomenon. Language connects people and brings them together in a community. It is interesting to look at one more point at this juncture, and that is the relationship between thought and language. Can we think without language? Is language possible without thinking, without thoughts? Both are inextricably intertwined. So there is no thinking without language, and there is no language without thinking. You can express your thoughts with the help of language and the concepts, words, symbols that you get from the language, and they enable you to think further. Similarly, language is closely connected with the work or achievements of mankind right from the Stone Age. Let us say up to today. Whatever humans have thought and materialized is intertwined with language. Through language, thoughts, feelings, experiences, knowledge were transferred from one generation to the next, from one region of globe to another. Here I'm talking about language in general and not specifically talking about Marathi or Malayalam or English. After we have seen the functions, the basic functions of language, we can take note that language has also one more function, that is poetic function. In the same language which one speaks in day-to-day life, the poets and authors use the same language for their poetic and artistic expression, their thoughts and feelings, to convey their thoughts and feelings with the same language. But we will come to this point a little later. Everything what we do gets reflected in the language we speak. And that is how we can share it with others. And if that is the case, then we can easily understand how and why culture of a community is closely connected with the language. Language is also an important part of our identity, of our social identity. You feel comfortable and safer when your own language is spoken around you. When you go abroad and if unexpectedly you hear some words in your language, you feel happy and relieved. It works like a stress reliever because you are psychologically, emotionally closer to your language, to your mother tongue, that is language spoken at home or in your family. I'm not going here deep into the definitions and discussions of mother tongue because it is something else. I mean, it has a very large chapter. But I would like to narrate here one incident. Once, that is in the year 2000, I had attended an international intercultural course in Germany designed for teachers of German as foreign language. There were many East European colleagues teaching in their respective countries, teaching German in their respective countries. They were attending the course with me. Once I asked a colleague from Czech Republic, do you know Russian language? Because I heard that in East European countries, Russian was taught in every school. It was a kind of compulsory. She said, yes, but I refuse to converse in Russian due to political reasons. Under the supremacy of Soviet Union earlier, when they were part of the East European bloc, I was forced to talk in Russian, or I was forced to learn Russian, but now I'm free to choose, so I do not speak Russian. Her remark was unexpected for me, as I was looking at Russian language from a different perspective altogether. But for her, it was a political decision not to use Russian. This clearly shows how you are emotionally connected with the language. In this particular case, you start hating language because you hate speakers of that language. Let us examine another example where foreigners or sometimes intruders also take advantage of this fact that you are emotionally close to your language, and they reach their goals by using local language. For example, the Christian missionaries, as they came to India, they translated Bible and other religious scripts in Indian languages to reach their goals, to spread the religion, of course. Nowadays, multinational companies come to India with their products, literature of which is made available in local languages. It is one of the oldest trade strategies. If you want to sell something, go and talk the language of the buyers. Then you are better connected with the buyers. These examples show psychological and emotional bonding with your language. There is a famous story when Kennedy, then US president, went to Berlin in 1963. The first time after the Berlin Wall was built, this wall was built in 1961. And I think after 22 months or so, he went to Berlin. This wall was built by East Germans, and Berlin was surrounded by East Germany because it was in between the East German area. So West Berlin people were actually, their morale was slightly down at that time. So he made a public speech there in West Berlin, and that is considered one of the finest speeches which Kennedy had made. He said that all free men, wherever they live, they are citizens of Berlin. And for them, he said, it is the proudest boast. And he said it very loudly, Ich bin ein Berliner. That is, I am a Berliner. Because he said, whoever is free, Berlin is for freedom. Berlin is the notion of freedom, he said. And whatever, because he said it in German, it was, I mean, he won the hearts of the people of Berlin, West Berlin. And he symbolized Berlin for freedom. And saying so, Ich bin ein Berliner, won the hearts of the people in West Berlin, and it was for them a strong booster for their morale. This sentence of Kennedy became a hallmark for Cold War epoch. Now the Berlin Wall does not exist anymore, and Cold War is also a past for Europeans. But this incident shows again the emotional and psychological bonding with language. Kennedy used it, of course, for obvious political reasons. But this also points out to the fact that the language preserves everything that happened in past and takes place in present. Sometimes the things or incidences or experiences that are represented in language, they cease to exist. But the words or expressions remain in the languages for a long time. I read a very interesting book written by Anupam Mishra, Aaj Bhi Khare Hai Talab, which was published in 1993. It tells us how rich was the Indian tradition of constructing talab, that is constructing lakes, and tradition of preserving and conserving existing natural lakes. It is a small book, and there is one chapter on reflections of this talab tradition in languages, in words, or in sayings and proverbs. And he used examples from Hindi, Rajasthani, and Bhojpuri. I have read this book in Marathi translation rendered by Pradeep Bhalge. But I found it very interesting that though this talab tradition, which was there earlier, does not exist anymore, the words, the proverbs, the sayings, everything is there in those languages. The words indicating the particular professions of the people, which are connected with the talab tradition, they are still there. Similarly, in the folk songs and folk literature, the narratives preserved also show how the imaginations and dreams of our ancestors were reflected in the language and literature. One can keep giving hundreds and thousands of examples that prove that language and culture are closely connected. They influence each other. A particular language points out usually to a specific group of people. I have been teaching a foreign language to Indian students, and out of my long time experience, I can say that when you learn another language, a foreign language, it does not involve only learning or teaching its alphabets and grammar rules, but you learn simultaneously about the traditions, behavior, culture of the speakers of that particular language. So it is about learning another culture through the language. In our multilingual country, many languages are spoken, and almost each one of us learn during our school days more than one language. And as per individual capabilities and skills, we can converse, read, and write in more than one languages. So we get acquainted with more than one language, and together with that, with the culture of that language speaking community. In Spanish language, there is one saying, when you learn another language, then you live one more life in the same life. So it is not only culture, but it is life, it is said in Spanish Spain. Any language brings along with it a different human behavior and a way of life. When I had gone for the first time to Germany, and I was talking to my German friend, I told her, we are not used to saying thank you and please every time as you Germans do. So please excuse me and understand me that I'm not a rude person, and I have not done it intentionally, because I don't say always thank you and please. She said, oh, good, you told me that, because I was expecting sometimes that you would thank me or you would say please to me, but you did not. So I said, no, but when we say this in my mother tongue, sometimes and very often, then it is sometimes, it sounds artificial and false. So if I use them very often, it is false in Marathi. So that is how the behavior of the speakers and the language, they are connected. Of course, nowadays our habits are changed, and we also say often thank you and please. But for that also we have borrowed the English words and not Marathi words. Language evolves and develops as per needs and requirements of the speakers. The past and present of the speakers are reflected in the language. We have so many different languages in India and so many different cultures. The interesting point is that all languages differ from each other. Their scripts are also different, but they still have something in common. But this commonness is also not the same in each case. For example, in most of the languages, you may find words having Sanskrit origin, but they mean something else. For example, I heard that Satkar in Bengali means something else. It is not felicitation as in Marathi, but it is a kind of the last rituals made. So it is different. You may find similarities in grammatical structures in some of the South Indian language.
Miss, are you there? Can you hear us? You've unfortunately cut out. You had just cut out, ma'am. Like, so sorry.
Oh, okay. So
Can
I'll
you
just
repeat?
repeat. Each
Yes, ma'am.
language indicates words. Am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am. You are audible.
Each language indicates words that show influence of some foreign languages, which could be different in case of every language depending upon the history of that particular state. In Marathi, for example, we had plenty of Persian words. They got mixed so very well in Marathi that one is hardly aware of this Persian influence in Marathi. No language is static. It goes on changing. Only the speed of the change is very slow. It takes words from other languages, use them. Sometimes they are completely forgotten after a period of time, or sometimes they are accepted in that language. The community speaking that particular language chooses or rejects. This could happen due to different reasons. Kerala, for example, has a very different social history than the history in Maharashtra. Having large coastal area available, this state had trade and connections with the world outside since ancient times. Ships right from Europe, Africa, Arab world, from Southeast and Far East Asian countries up to China came with their different languages to Kerala. Kerala was connected with the whole world, so one could assume that their culture became multi-dimensional. Today we can see cosmopolitan cultural atmosphere there. And I'm sure, I do not know Malayalam, but I'm sure that language must be rich in vocabulary and must be complex in grammatical structures. It has borrowed words, which I have read somewhere, from Sanskrit, from Tamil, Hindi, Urdu, Persian, Arabic, Dutch, Portuguese, French, English, and so on. Tamil is said to be the oldest languages in India, oldest language in India, sorry. It dates back more than 4,000 years. I'm not expert in this field, but I have read that there are Tamil scripts found that were written probably in 4th or 5th century. Tamil is recognized as one of the official languages spoken in Sri Lanka and Singapore. And it has significant number of speakers in Malaysia, Mauritius, Fiji, and South Africa. And remember that languages do not go alone from one region to another with their speakers, but they take the culture of the speakers with them. Because in Malaysia or in Singapore, you can easily get dosa, but in their own style. But you can have some culinary, I mean, when you miss something, you can eat there some Indian food also. For example, we all know that people belonging to the community, areas adjacent to the borders of any state, they speak both the languages. Like in the area between Maharashtra and Gujarat, the border people speak both the languages, or at least they have passive knowledge of the language in their neighborhood. Then what role do languages play in cultural diversity? Do they have any role to play? This is our today's question. As we said earlier, language and culture of any community are intertwined. They work as mirrors to each other. Language is considered as part of culture. At the same time, language builds your cultural and social identity by using language as a tool of communication. You express through language. When you are a poet and want to write a poem or a story or a play, which would be performed on stage, you use the same everyday language, but at the same time, it is not the same everyday language. It is little elevated, you may say. The some words may have slightly different meaning. The words may be used as poetic images. The poet may change the usual context of the word and may relocate them in a different context. But the readers or listeners still understand and what the poet wants to convey. That is the beauty of poetry. That is the beauty of literature. Literature reflects again the whole world in which the poet is living. Or the poet may indicate the world in which he or she wants to live, or write about changes he or she is dreaming of. Literature is at the same time mirror image of the society or culture from where the poet originates, but at the same time, it is his or her own critical analysis of the situation. We say, Je na dekhe Ravi, te dekhe Kavi. That is, poet sees everything. What the sun, even sun cannot see. So it is the role of any poet or artist to show the lapses, mistakes, shortcomings of the people, analyze them and criticize them, to take stand, to confront them. So this is the actually the role of the poet. So literature has an important place in any culture. For any intercultural dialogue and exchange, one talks about exchange of literature. And here we come to this, to a sort of answer to the question, and that is translate the literature from one language to the other language, which is, according to me, very important to conserve the different cultures and understand them through their literature. Understanding the other is the basic step towards conserving and promoting the other. When you understand the other, you accept the coexistence of the other. In conserving or preserving, there is a certain staticness actually. You conserve or preserve something in museums, but the cultures, languages are not static. They are in constant change. They go on changing. They are in movement. They are flexible. They accept and reject things. They understand and assimilate others. Hence, when there is a dialogue between two existing cultures, that could happen through translation of literature, which is one option, you may say, then you would try to understand other culture through it. So when you want to have cultural diversity even further in future, you have to create a dialogue, a way to dialogue, a way to connection. And this was the dream, this translation of literature. This was the dream of Sane Guruji. That is why he started with his Antar Bharati movement, which has the goal to have dialogue, to establish connection between different states, communities, languages, and cultures in India. He wanted to make children and youngsters aware of the diverse cultures, and that is why he called it Antar Bharati. Sane Guruji, some of you may not know him. He was one of the freedom fighters and follower of Mahatma Gandhi ji. And he was the one who did Satyagraha and Uposhan so that the temple, the doors of the temple of Pandharpur, Vithoba, he said it should be open to all the people belonging to all the castes. And he succeeded in it. That is why he said that one should translate literatures within India, in Indian languages. For example, Marathi literature, Punjabi literature into Marathi, Marathi literature into Gujarati, Bengali literature in Urdu, and so on. If we want to name some of the contemporary translators of Indian literature, we remember some renowned names like Uma Kulkarni, who translated many Kannada novels into Marathi, or Ashok Shahane, Mrunalini Gadkari, who translated Bengali literature into Marathi, and of course Gulzar Sahab, who translated some of the poems of Kusumagraj from Marathi into Urdu, Hindi. The job of the translator is to take a literary text with all its literary and aesthetic values, with its message from one culture to another. not know that language, in which the text is the original text. He or she wants to translate it. Actually, the translator would say, I've read it, I have understood it, and why should I do the
Ma'am, you seem to be cutting out, ma'am. Can you hear us, ma'am?
so?
Ma'am, you just cut out, ma'am.
Here again.
You there, ma'am?
The text, and why should I do the whole business of translation?
Ma'am, can you hear us? You're cutting out, ma'am.
Oh,
Yeah.
now also?
Slightly, but we can hear you now, but it's
Oh,
just slight interruption, ma'am.
okay. Now?
Oh, it's just okay, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, I would
You may
give one.
say, ma'am. Sorry.
Okay. Translators do not say so, that why should I do the translation? Otherwise, we had no chance to know the excellent literary works from the world literature. Translation of literature from one Indian language into another is why very necessary. I remember that renowned writer Kavita Mahajan, who is unfortunately no more, she conceptualized a project of contemporary Indian women writers, and around 14 books written by Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam, Hindi, English, Bengali writers were translated by different translators into Marathi, and they were published under the edition of Kavita Mahajan. Such projects give important contribution to the not new which number of texts from English literature translated in Marathi, for example, many Bengali novels, later Ravindranath and Sharat Chandra, they were translated from it started from late 19th century, I suppose, and they became not only popular in the circles of younger readers in Maharashtra, but they also introduced to them tradition of romantic literature, which was not there in Marathi. The Bengali literature brought into Marathi a different perspective to look at life. Through the translation of literature, you do not get to read different literature, but through that you get acquainted with a different way of life. There is another perspective. In all types of biosciences, in all types of biosciences, one often emphasizes the importance of biodiversity in the environment. The forests having ample species of plants, trees, animals, birds, and insects, and microorganisms are considered rich and fit to survive. Similarly, communities having cultural diversity are fitter to survive a longer life. Nurture each other, promote each other through an intercultural dialogue. One way of having this dialogue or exchange is translation of fiction and non-fiction works. I myself am a translator, and I know it by experience how joyful the and sometimes overwhelming is the process of translation. As translating goes very close to the literary work, understand it and with all small and big details thoroughly, and enjoy the aesthetic elements. Everybody can become a translator, but those who think that they can do try it once. With this suggestion, I conclude my talk. I thank you once again. And now we can have any question. And
Miss, are you there? Sunanda ma'am, are you there, ma'am? You're cutting out very badly. You're having a unfortunate network problem. Ma'am, are you there? Sunanda ma'am?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Begin our session panel discussion in 5 minutes. Sunanda ma'am just disconnected because of that. And just up to then
Okay, no issue. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're actually pretty audible. I've been wondering all this time if my internet's the one that's not working.
Yeah,
but-
even I was thinking the same because there was disturbance.
Yeah, I was like really scared. I was like, oh.
मी ह्याच्यावर जाते आता. जाऊ दे, मरू दे. मोबाईल स्टँड बाहेर गेलीस तरी चालेल. नको लावू, त्यांनीच ते हे होतं.
Hello, Sunanda ma'am.
Hello.
Hello, ma'am. I was just trying to call you because you got disconnected suddenly.
I know. But now I am on my mobile phone.
Yeah. Yes. It's okay, ma'am.
Okay.
So we'll move towards the question and answer session.
Yes.
It was
Yes.
a very good, insightful perspective of your oration on the topic, ma'am, Sunanda madam.
Thanks.
And because what you have given was a very informative speech, which you have orated to us all present here, we'll just proceed now straight away to the question and answer session. So, shall we begin, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay, ma'am. So,
Yeah.
you got it, ma'am. So, to anybody in the audience, would anyone like to give a question to the ma'am to ask? Does anybody have a question? Any questions related to the topic, guys? Yeah, you're audible. I think. Are you able to hear one of the participants, ma'am?
Not yet.
Hold on, ma'am.
Has she already started?
Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Jagruti Majar. Ma'am, my doubt was like there are many regional and local and marginalized languages in India. So how is it a possibility that some languages are so marginalized while some are so popular? Why we can see this difference?
Yeah, I mean, actually, we say that there is no hierarchy when we talk about languages. There should not be any hierarchy, but in our society, it is usually the speakers who decide it. And nowadays, I have heard that in some Adivasi areas, textbooks, school textbooks are written also in that Adivasi Boli.
so that the children would enjoy learning in the school. Because earlier this Praman Bhasha, or earlier this standard Marathi, was in each and every textbook. But nowadays they have considered it, and I think it was some UNICEF project where in the dialects also the textbooks were written, so that you get to know the concepts, for example, in mathematics, or the narratives in history, and so on. So it is, I think, a good start. But as you very rightly said, yes, sometimes that kind of discrimination is there, that they are not very popular. Hello?
Yes,
Hello,
ma'am.
was I audible to you?
Yes, ma'am. Audible and clear.
Okay, thank you.
Ma'am, hello, good morning.
Yes.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm Minisha. I would like to ask a question.
Yeah.
That in this age, the regional languages are kind of dying. There are some languages which were spoken first are not now being spoken right now. So, do you think there will be a revolution where these languages will upgrow?
No, actually, you see, the regional languages are not dying out. They are being used, actually, because we know that in cities or in metropolitan or in cosmopolitan areas or atmosphere, English is preferred. And regional languages, the people are sending their children in English medium schools, for example. But when you see the communication happening in regional languages, for example, even in social media, earlier only English was available on Facebook or in any other social media, for example. But now all the regional languages are there. Even for multinational companies, they are now preferring that their products, the literature of their products, should be translated into regional languages so that they can reach the buyers. And it was earlier not the case. It was only in English and Hindi. Whatever, for example, you buy something, some kitchen gadget, and the information was only in English or Hindi. But nowadays, you see that there are so many languages representing that manual. So how to use that particular gazette is written in Marathi, in Gujarati, in Tamil, and so on. So though it seems that regional languages are not preferred for communication, they are actually not dying out, because the number of people using that language for communication or even for other purposes is also there, is also sometimes it seems it is increasing. I mean, I won't be saying that they are not in use or they will die out or cease to exist. It all depends on the speakers of the language.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
It was very clear.
Yeah. Okay.
And Miss, I got just only one question I got. Did you, means I would ask actually, did you know that what exactly happened when the Germans heard John F. Kennedy when he came to Berlin? Did you know actually what the Germans thought of him when he said "Ich bin ein Berliner"?
Yeah, "Ich bin ein Berliner." That is what he said in German, not in English. He was speaking in English, in American English, that too. But he spoke this particular sentence in German. And so he got connected with the Berlin people. And the people of Berlin were very happy that he spoke that particular sentence in German, and saying that actually to be West Berlin, actually to be West Berliner was a moment of the thing to be proud of. And that is what he said, because Ich bin ein Berliner is actually does not mean East Berlin, but he meant West Berlin. And the people in West Berlin, they could understand it, that he is talking of free Berlin, because they used to say it is free Berlin. Free Berlin means West Berlin. And even the university in West Berlin, it's called Free University. It is still there. So that the underlining that freedom which they had, it was actually underlined by Kennedy. And that is why they felt very happy. And it was right after the wall was built. It was in not even 2 years, 22 months, I think. In 1961, June, the wall was built. And the repercussions and the influence of that wall was tremendous on West Berlin, because it was like cutting off from West Germany and cutting off from Western Europe. So what Kennedy had said, that was very important for them to boost their morale.
True, ma'am.
Yeah.
And just only one fun fact about it, because what I was wanting to ask was that if you knew exactly what the Germans were thinking, because when he said, Ich bin ein Berliner, the funny joke, ma'am, was he was trying to obviously say that he is also German, like part of Berlin. But the joke was the Germans didn't look at him as he is a Berliner or even a German. Because when he said the word Berliner, as you said, sometimes the words sound similar, but they mean different. Berliner in German actually means a special donut. So everyone laughed at him at first and was like, did he just say he was a donut?
Yes, that was that joke was also there. I mean, the people of Berlin, they are very famous to crack the jokes, especially on the pronunciation and on the language which is spoken by foreigners at that time, and especially the Americans. So that joke was quite popular at that time.
True, ma'am. Because also he did call himself literally a German dessert. That's why.
Yeah.
So
could I possibly ask a question?
Yes.
Thank you so much. So you at some point in time mentioned about the continuance of a language is entirely dependent upon its speakers, right? Now, if you look at society in general and how it's structured, there is an oppressor and there is the oppressed, right? So a language like Gujarati or Marathi or Hindi or Tamil mostly end up being the language of the oppressors, right? Because it's mostly spoken by people who are well educated, especially like if you start looking at dialects. So right now I'm living in Telangana and everyone speaks Telugu here. They also speak Telugu in Andhra Pradesh, right? But the Telugu spoken in Telangana, even in like there's 4 pockets in Telangana, right? The Telugu spoken in each pocket is different. And one of those is dying out because that specific dialect is more spoken by the Dalit folk of Telangana. And so now that language is dying off, even though they use that language on an everyday basis, even though it is still, it's a dialect of Telugu, right? It's still Telugu, but it's not acceptable in spaces where they are speaking Telugu. So in that kind of a situation, when we're talking about the language of somebody who comes from an oppressed community, how do you think we could work towards preserving that?
Oh, yeah. That is really very unfortunate if it is happening, because people, those people who do not know the importance of that particular dialect, they are actually working on it. So there should be some initiative from the citizens who can see this kind of operation, and they should help out the people of that particular community speaking that dialect, I think. And for example, like people did in Gadchiroli area, where in Madia or in other languages, they have made the textbooks. So like some constructive or some creative things can be done to preserve that particular dialect, and that should be boosted to the community who is speaking that dialect. But it is very difficult for those who kind of NGOs who are working or who want to work with that particular goal. But in practice, it is really difficult when for example, who has the power and who has the chair, that is also very important. I mean, that political will should also be there, or somebody who can sponsor that particular activity of preserving the language. It is very unfortunate if such things happen.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah.
All right. Well, since it's now actually now reached the end of time.
Yes.
Since it's now reached the end of time, I would like to obviously give a vote of thanks to say that the audience feels grateful for your words of wisdom, and we are very happy that you have actually shared a lot to us, ma'am. We thank you very much with full-on gratitude.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
See you.
Please, a round of applause.
So is it concluded now?
No, ma'am. We will have to begin with our panel discussion.
Okay.
Please stay with us because there are 3 panelists, those who have already joined with us.
Okay.
We'll start in 2.
I will try to be there because I had already talked to Mrs. Mohanty that
yes, ma'am.
due to
I'm
some
only Mrs.
difficulty at family.
Okay.
I mean, I will, a few minutes I will be there, then I will go.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Dikta, you are. Please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. A great afternoon to everyone present here. I, Diksha Dethe, welcome you all to the panel discussion of our cultural symposium. Firstly, I would like to welcome our esteemed panelist, Dr. Mohsina Mukaddam ma'am, Dr. Lopamudra Mohanty ma'am, and Tanushri Bhavna ma'am. Then I would like to welcome our beloved principal, Dr. Suchitra Naik ma'am, our vice principals, Dr. Priyamvada Tokekar ma'am, Professor Subhash Shinde sir, and Dr. Mahesh Patil sir, IQAC coordinators, library coordinators, self-finance course coordinators, and convener of our symposium, Dr. Sangeeta Mohanty ma'am, all the teachers, helping staff, and all my dear friends. Culture is a broad term that encompasses beliefs, values, norms, behaviors, and overall can be understood as a way of being. Indian culture is built upon centuries of heritage and history, making it one of the oldest in the world. What exactly is cultural diversity? Cultural diversity is the idea that every person can make unique and positive contribution to larger society because because of rather than in spite of the differences. Languages, beliefs, food, gender, attire are the foundation and building forces for the cultural components, and they need to be conserved effectively. To elaborate on this, we have our esteemed panelists present with us today. This session will be moderated by our senior Jagruti Mahajan. And now I request our convener, Dr. Sangeeta Mohanty, to introduce our panelists.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Diksha, for welcoming all of us to this panel discussion session. And it's really I'm really honored to introduce all our panelists, those who are from various field and expert in their field. And we have chosen the title of our symposium, that is Challenges to Conserve the Cultural Diversities, where the panel discussion will be held on the various components of cultural diversity. I know that India is a land of cultural amalgamation. It's a land of diversities. There are lots of languages, dialects, races, caste, and also there is diversities of genders, and there are multiple art, craft, music, lots of things made India a cultural mosaic. And the young generation should know about the tradition, customs, and the values of our Indian society, and then only they can take the responsibilities of taking diversities and the beauty of to the next generation, and also to make them integrate to the world scenario. That as we are different from each other, adds value to our strength. As we are different in language, now Madam just spoke about language, and that gives us identity. And I believe that as we are different from each other in our thoughts, in our expressions, and in our village, rather we become more and more strong, and it adds we become strengthened to our contributing to our unity. We have three panelists, those who are going to share their thoughts and expertise in their work regarding the components of cultural diversity. We are having Dr. Mohsina Mukaddam, Mrs. Lopamudra Mohanty, and also Ms. Tanushree Bhavna. I would like to introduce first Mohsina Mukaddam, Madam. Dr. Mohsina Mukaddam is Associate Professor in the Department of History in Ramnaran Ruya Autonomous College of University of Mumbai. She is very much passionate about food, cooking, as well as eating, which has eventually led her to conduct research in food history. Her papers on food history have been published in national and international journals, and she has contributed scholarly articles to numerous newspapers and magazines, which are appreciated not only by academics but also by general public. She has designed and conducted certificate courses on food diversity and culture. She has worked as consultant, scriptwriter, and participated in food-related programs on TV channels. She has been awarded fellowship by UGC for minor research project entitled Cookbooks as Tasty Sampler of History. She was recipient of Sir Dorabji Tata Trust Postdoctorate Fellowship for project titled Term in a Teacup, the culture of tea drinking in Mumbai. We are very, very fortunate to have Dr. Mohsina Mukaddam Madam with us he will be throwing light upon the food diversities exist in India. Our next esteemed panelist is Mrs. Lopamudra Mohanty, who is the founder of Big Buddy World Education Private Limited, which provides reading and storytelling program for children and adults. He is a professional storyteller and certified phonics trainer. He was the academic support consultant for Trinity College London and also has been trainer for the workshop of the Global Education and Leadership Foundation and is in the board of advisors of Bookwala organization. She has been associated with various schools, libraries, museums, bookstores, publishing houses, and theatre spaces telling and performing stories, training teachers and parents too. She has done some corporate storytelling for Liberty General Insurance. She has recently initiated a Project IBAC, that is Indian Bhasa, Art and Kahani, with an objective to revise Indian languages, Indian dying art forms and architecture through the medium of stories, and another pet project is Reading Under the Trees, with an objective to get reading back into the family time and create a space for parent-child bonding and drill in the importance of responsible storytelling and integrated storytelling. Lopamudra is a theatre professional and is associated with Jubin Driver Theatre. She has performed on gender issues at NCPA of 10 Cuckoo Club and at various other places across India. She is an Odissi dancer too, a marathon runner, a cyclist. She is overall a dynamic person and having a very pleasant personality. And she's so lovingly known as Big Buddy by children. We are really honored to have you, madam. And our next esteemed panelist is Tanushree Bhavi, who is a certified comprehensive sexuality educator with a bachelor's in political science. She started working at the age of 16 as a very tender age, and over the past 10 years, she has tried to multiple professions and job roles from marketing to journalism, and nothing ever felt as right as being an educator. Fantastic. She worked in the field of queer sensitization, affirmative and inclusive sexual and digital literacy, among other things. Often working with students while growing up, they have always enjoyed interacting with students, young adults, and even parents. Tanushree feels very passionate about evolving the way education takes place in India and are very passionate about playing a role in public policy to usher in that change someday. We are really proud to have three esteemed panelists, those who are expert in their field, not only food, gender, and but they are going to throw light on other um, uh, aspects of our diversities that compose our Indian culture. I now request our moderator Jagriti Mahajan to go ahead with this session. Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
Hello, am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So good afternoon to everyone present here. I truly appreciate everyone for joining here with us, including all the dignitaries and my dear friends. I welcome all the panelists for our today's panel discussion. Mohsina ma'am, who will discuss on the subject of food diversity, Lopamudra ma'am, who will discuss on the linguistic diversity, and Tanushri ma'am will throw light on the subject of gender diversity. So we'll start our today's panel discussion with Mohsina ma'am. Ma'am, first of all, I'd like to ask you one question. Do you think food diversity, that is the indigenous food habits of India, have been challenged by the global economic and cultural forces?
Uh, Thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me and having a very detailed introduction. And I also congratulate the organizer of this session as well as the whole conference, because when we are talking about cultural diversity, usually we don't look at food as a part of culture. In the hierarchy of the cultural component, food is considered to be way below, okay, in the list. And therefore, very rarely we see the food being discussed at the academic conferences, at the academic seminar. Though food is very integral part of our culture, and we consider food as a Purna Brahma, Anna is a Purna Brahma. Still, when it comes to academics, we don't pay that much attention to food. And therefore, I'm very happy that you thought about food as one component of cultural diversity and invited me to express my views on it. Recently, UNESCO has accepted food as part of intangible heritage. And therefore, now, all over the world, food is being studied in detail academically. Also, not only academicians, but other people who are involved in the business of food, like chefs or industrialists, restaurateurs, and others are also participating in this discussion. And therefore, when Madam approached me, I took up her invitation because I wanted to interact with you young student who are going to be the researcher in few years, or you are already a researcher, you are already studying and researching in your field of interest. So you should also consider food as a part of your interest, as a sphere of your interest. Now the question on globalization, and do I see globalization and the economic and cultural forces which are changing or which are influencing our food habit as a challenge? See, first thing I want to make it clear over here is that globalization is not a recent phenomenon. It is not as if from the 20th century, after globalization, after the liberalization policy, that suddenly globalization became a part of our existence. No, globalization was always there. Even you can trace this phenomenon from the ancient period. Being a student of history and teacher of history, I may be giving you many references from ancient and medieval past. Please pardon me. Okay, from ancient medieval period, even during the colonial period, there were many things, ingredients, dishes, ideas, which were introduced in our dietary practices, which were accepted by us as part of our food habits. Wherever it was acceptable to us, we accepted it. Wherever it was not acceptable to us, we did not overly rejected it, but we adapted it to suit our religious and other sensibilities. And therefore, globalization is already there. The only difference is that in present time, it has become very visible. It is seen in every aspect of our existence. And therefore, people have started believing that this is a new thing, and it is only in recent past that globalization has been changing our lifestyle, our food habits. It will be very interesting. I would like to give you one whole lecture on how the globalization had changed our food habit from ancient to modern times, but this is not that platform. So globalization, I don't see as a challenge, but I see it positively in the sense that it has encouraged, enhanced our food experience. Okay, it has not made us jingoistic in the matter of food. It has kept us open to accept various ingredients like various fruits, vegetables, spices, these recipes and dishes, and most important of all, the ideas which are also associated with food. And therefore, one should look at this globalization positively. And in present time, when we see that many recipes and many food habits and dishes which are being introduced in our diet, we have now become a global foodie, you can say, because we enjoy Chinese, we enjoy Italian, Mexican, Pan-Asian, Mediterranean. You say it and we have it. And it is not only limited to elite class. Earlier, it was limited to elite class because they were traveling, they were experiencing this different kind of food, and they were getting used to that food, they were liking that food. But now, these things have been come down to even common people. You have Chinese stalls on the roadsides as a street food. You also have pizzas available on the street. So this global food, which was earlier limited to particular group of people, has now become available to all. And why it became popular? Why things became popular? Because we adapted it. The Chinese will not recognize Indian Chinese at all, because we have Indianized it so much to suit our taste, to suit our taste buds. Same thing we did with pizza also. So we adapted their recipes to suit our taste, to suit our beliefs, and therefore we could easily enjoy them. Okay? Another aspect of this globalization is that when new food is introduced, new ingredient is introduced, we try to include it in our regular food also. And we use it as we would have used other ingredients or other known ingredients. And therefore, a new type of food or new type of cuisine has come up, which we can call as a fusion food. It is a fusion of other countries' food and Indian. And that is also one positive thing I see from the globalization point of view. And most important thing, that when we see that food of some other country, other culture is being enjoyed by people, they are liking it, it also make us do some introspection about our own food also. That why our food is not becoming popular globally, or why it is not known from one part of India to another part of India. And then we start making it popular. And fortunately, at present time, the social media is helping us a lot in this matter. So if you go to YouTube or you go to Facebook, there are so many groups who are popularizing, who are making it available, their food habit, their food culture to others. Okay. And that I see also as a part of globalization, because if we are enjoying the food of others, then we should also showcase our own food culture to others. That thing has now brought Indian food on the global platform. Okay, it has put Indian food on international map, I would say. It was there earlier, but it was very limited. It was only few dishes or the cuisine of particular group who has been active in it. For example, people know tandoori or what Westerner call as a curry. But now we know that the curry is a generic term. There are so many types of gravies which are enjoyed by Indians. And therefore, now others have also started understanding that curry is not one particular dish, but it has diverse element in it. And it is different from one part of India to another. And therefore, to call Indian gravies just as a Indian curries is wrong. So, in all, I would sum up saying that globalization, I don't see as a challenge in which means that it might compromise your food culture or it may marginalize your food culture. Then I don't see globalization as challenge. I look at globalization as something positive, which will enhance our food culture, which will also make us showcase our food culture to the world.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such wonderful insight. I just would like to mention that, as you said earlier, global food were not limited to particular group of people. Like now, it has reached to the common man also. So, do you think it is affecting the rural areas also nowadays, or it is not reached to the rural party yet?
No, it has reached every corner of India. As I told in my earlier answer, that because of the improvement in the means of communication and because of the social media, every person in India has now mobile in his or her hand. They also watch YouTube, and they get interested. For example, if they see any dish, Chinese dish being prepared on the YouTube, they get interested and they would like to try it. If the material is available to them, then they will cook it. If not, then they will come to the town and try to test it. So now even the town and the villages have food of different part of India and the part of world available to them. If you go to the villages now, you will see the Chinese stalls over there as well. You will see that the pizza is being made available in the restaurants over there. So now, as I said earlier, that globalization has become more visible now because it is spread to nook and corner of our country or nook and corner of the world, I would say. So earlier, globalization was limited because it was the things, recipes, everything was available to particular group in particular area. The means of communication was not so good. Then people did not know how that particular thing looked. Even, for example, I will give you tomato. Now tomato has become so common. We cannot imagine our life without tomato. But till the beginning of 20th century, tomato was not so common. People had not seen tomato. They had not tasted tomato. And they had no idea what it is. And there was many rumors about tomato. For example, in Marathi, we called it as a Kharzula Vanga. Vanga is brinjal. Kharzula means which gives you itching. And therefore, it was not appreciated. But now, any new fruit, say passion fruit or dragon fruit, or say any new ingredient which comes in the market, avocado, people do not think twice before buying it and using it. Not only that, but our farmers, considering the market available for it, had also started cultivating it. So that is it. That is how now global dishes, ingredients have reached every every part of India.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I would like to uh, continue with the Lopa Mudra, ma'am. Ma'am, are you there? Our next panelist. Ma'am, you're not audible. Yes, ma'am. We can hear you.
Hi, Shimon. Nice to meet you.
No,
See you.
actually, Shimon is another person's name. I'm Jagruti Mahajan.
Hi, Jagruti.
Yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Hope you are doing well.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I'm fine.
about the language, the first
Mhm.
question every time arises in our mind is, in what does the loss of language signifies a loss of culture? Like, what's the relation between language and culture?
Okay. We have already spoken about language quite a lot, but I'll just ask you one thing. In a sense, if you have to say colors, different colors in your language, how do you say that? Different names of the colors in your language, your mother language.
Like lal, piura, hirwa,
Uh-huh. Any other colors?
nira.
Uh-huh. Lovely. How does the sound? How does
Sounds
the sound? I think
unusual
the audience.
because we
Yeah.
don't use it often, so it sounds unusual.
Yeah. Okay. So now suppose in a particular language, which is the dominant language, if we talk about, like, we already know we have to accept the fact that there are languages which are dominant and there are languages which are less used or is marginalized, as we can name them, right? Now what happens is when the particular names of the colors in the dominant language is given to us, we only remember those colors in those names, right? Correct. And what happens is the other names which are just beautiful and those colors which exist, we don't get to know them, right? We don't tell those, we only get limited. So suppose it's in English, then we know red, blue, green, yellow, orange, peach, whatever languages is whatever colors are mentioned.
I
And
just like to
slowly,
interrupt and just like tell you, like, there's one
yeah,
color like gerua, which
yeah,
is not having, I think,
it
English.
doesn't have an English
Yeah.
name to it, but how do I go ahead and tell that color? How do I explain it? Either I show something or I say iske saath isko mila do, uske saath isko mila do, and all those things. So I'm just saying it's so what happens is when one particular language starts to dominate, then we lose that particular thing which I'm talking about, the effect, the beauty of that color. And suddenly it's from multicolored, it becomes a monochrome. And when it becomes monochrome, then of course we are losing out so many. And this, I'm just mentioned a color. It can be so many other things which we lose out in slowly, and we don't realize that also in the process of thinking that, okay, if I speak this particular language, I'll sound modern, I sound intelligent, I sound I have reached, or I'm cool. So many other things, these are all different states, kinds of what do you say, identification we have created for ourselves, right? And that is where we are losing out on our cultural diversity. So I just gave a small example of a color. You can put this into any small incidents. I'm sure everyone, all of you youngsters sitting over here, you will understand what I'm trying to say through this small example. Correct? Okay. Yeah. Tell me.
Yes, ma'am, understood. Ma'am, also then I would like to further ask you that what role mother tongue plays to preserve all this language and culture?
A lot. I'll share an incident. Okay. So we met this youngsters who speak Nar language, which is spoken in Meghalaya. Okay. In the Jaintia tribe, this particular language is spoken. And they are youngsters like you guys, okay, and they share songs on YouTube. And for me, they are change makers because they are through music, they are saving the language. I mean, basically getting the language into the forefront. So what happened is when I met these youngsters and told, okay, can you share some songs? And of course, they had some modern songs. And that is when I asked them, in your mother language, can you go ahead and sing some of your traditional old songs? Okay, right? And then told traditional old songs, okay, we haven't heard much because most of us, our age, children, I mean, youngsters, they go to the city and they pick up English and Hindi, and nowadays Hindi as well. And we usually sing these kind of songs and not our traditional old songs. We don't remember much because my parents, your parents used to sing that because they know the mother language properly. So then they told, okay, give us 5 minutes. We'll just sit. And they sat down and they looked at YouTube, and they started checking out, and they picked up a particular song. Okay, and immediately they told, okay, we'll sing this, and they started, right? And while they were singing this song, suddenly I noticed one fellow. He had put his hand on his chest and he had closed his eyes, and he was humming it. And all of them were enjoying it, and they were snapping their fingers, and they were, going ahead and giving high fives. All those things were happening. So I asked them, what happened? What happened that suddenly you put your hand on your chest and you closed your eyes? And you won't believe, this fellow, he became so emotional at that point of time. And he's saying that, you know what, the moment I sang it in my mother language, okay, and it's a very traditional song in the sense because my grandparents used to sing it, correct? And suddenly I went into a different phase and I became very emotional. And that is when these youngsters, they decided that, and that is when we all decided that let's do one thing. Let's go ahead and record these songs from the older generation, okay? And then you go ahead and write it down. Then you go ahead and create cover version of this on YouTube because you all are singers. So what is happening? So how your mother language becomes so important, to go ahead and help you preserve the cultural diversity. Because if I read out the song to you, in the sense, I'll just read out the song to you, because when he read it out in English, the song says, don't forget your roots wherever we are, so that ours will not forget what our ancestors taught us. Our root is to be taken care with love and respect. The tradition or culture that we have is passed by our ancestors, so that we will not be enslaved by outsiders. Don't forget of what we are. Let people from around the world should know us, by all from east to west, that we are from the land that know humanity and godliness. Let us have good manners and be respectful. It is my land, your land, and land of our ancestors. You, the generations of our land, will carry forward the respect, the cultural identity that we have. Don't get distracted by others. The power is in your hand. If you don't know this, if you don't understand what your ancestors have told, if you don't know your mother language, if you don't know how to speak it, if you don't know how to understand it, how are you going to carry it forward? So that is what I wanted to share. So I just say that since you are youngsters over here, and this is an opportunity that I'm being able to meet you guys, I'm just saying that, see, we can talk about a lot of things. You just need to think what I can do. That will make a difference. Speak your mother language. That's the first thing. If you don't respect your mother language, no one is going to respect your mother language. जैसे बोलते हैं ना, मैं अपनी माँ की respect नहीं करूँ तो how can someone else respect it, right? The same way, if you don't respect it, no one is going to respect it. And if you don't speak, then of course the language will die and your children are not going to speak it. And that's how a language dies. First thing is, let's save the language. Then we can talk about cultural diversity and rest all the other things, right? Hope I made some sense. I'm just looking at somewhere where actions can be done.
Yes, very true. And as you said, technology can be an important part to pass on to the generation nowadays, as you mentioned also. So I completely agree with it. Technology can be a good medium, and effectively, if we use it, we can pass on to the generation, as you gave the example of songs. We can
podcast. I'll tell you what we have done. I mean, with our children, how technology we have used it because of COVID. Of course, we could reach to interiors. Okay. And what we did is we told children, you start sharing stories in your mother language. And this was put up on YouTube. So what happened in this process, children started discussing with their parents and grandparents about stories. So they were all stories about folk tradition, culture, stories about authors from their region or heritage sites from the region. So first thing is, what happened is, there's this platform, there's a space where children are being respected because they know their mother language fluently. Second, interaction between parents and grandparents are happening, which is very, very necessary. Right? Third, they're aware about the researching stories. They're aware about so many stories about their region. And fourth, they have a platform where they're coming and telling, and that is on YouTube, right? Or podcast. And then they are in the sense, when they have done that, they are said that they are praised for that. That helps them to go ahead and keep them motivated. And now, as ma'am had mentioned about translation work, how it helps. So they are since there were a team of children from who are speaking different Indian languages. So they started their folk tales. They've passed on to the other child who is translating it in the other language. And that child will be sharing it, and which can be created into bilingual books. So what I'm trying to say over here, you guys are so tech savvy. You guys want to do a difference. Right? And you can do it. It's just that simple, whether you want to do it, how you want to do it, and what is your objective behind that. I would say you can adopt an endangered language. List out your endangered language and how you can use technology to go ahead and adopt it and create and save a language. If each one of us go ahead and adopt an endangered language and use our whatever use. I have used my skill as storyteller. I have not done any research or anything, but what I've done is right. So I would suggest, since you guys are over here, just to tell you, use your skill, go ahead and save a language.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for such wonderful initiative. It was really great, and we would really follow it in our life. And we might take one topic as for our research also, to choose an endangered language and study on it. Thank you so much.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
Now we move on to the Tanushri ma'am. Tanushri ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, you are absolutely audible. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, ma'am. How are you?
I am very good, but I'm so sorry, I don't go by ma'am. I'm gender non-conforming, so they, them pronouns, so gender neutral language. So just avoid the ma'am, just Tanushri is perfectly fine. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, ma'am. The first question I'd like to ask you is, what is the impact of global trends on the gender diversity in India, especially? Like, what are the specific changes we could see after the global trends only, which we could have not seen before?
I think let's start by first defining what we mean by gender diversity, because there's two ways that gender diversity can be looked at, and one of them is trans exclusionary, which I would like to not do. So what is gender is where we should start, right? Gender is basically a social construct, which is a set of dictates of how somebody belonging to a certain quote unquote gender should behave, the roles that they should play, and the kind of clothes they should wear, the language they should speak, the way they should speak, so on and so forth. So gender is a set of dictates that are prescribed to an individual by the society, right? Now, in India, we often have this concept, and especially lately, now that, we've had the Trans Rights Act and we've had a little more trans visibility, there's a lot of conversation that this is against our culture, or that, this form of gender diversity is not in line with Indian traditional thought. And all I would say to that is we have multiple instances in our historical art that prove otherwise, right? Whether it be something that's as controversial and salacial as like the Kama Sutra, or it be something as simple as Kathakali, or it be something as religious as Ardhanareshwari, right? It has always existed. It is not that it did not exist. The only difference is that back then the level of marginalization that was dealt towards people who were trans was so high that they never got any visibility. They only started getting visibility after the global effect, right? Which is what you wanted to talk about. So I don't think that it didn't exist before, the US started talking about it. It's obviously existed, right? We've all seen the trans community in and around our own lives every day. Like, I'm sure, like growing up, कभी ना कभी तो किसी ना किसी शादी पे देखा ही होगा, no matter what, right? या किसी सिग्नल पे देखा होगा, या आप बॉम्बे में रहते हो तो ट्रेन में देखा होगा. So it's always existed. But in terms of academic conversation in India, most of our conversation is still limited to like the binaries of man and woman. We don't even go beyond, the binaries of man and woman into the binaries of like a trans man and a trans woman, let alone moving beyond that into like the non-binary aspect of gender, where there are people like me who don't conform to any gender. I don't identify as a woman or as a man because I think those roles are restrictive. And why must I force myself to fit into that, right? So it's also about, at the end of the day, right, we don't live in isolation. As much as there have been people trying to create an isolation around our country, we don't live in an isolated world. There is going to be an impact. There is going to be cross-cultural, influences. And it works both ways. You go to the US, I mean, I live in New Jersey half of the year, and वहाँ पे आप देखोगे कि जो trans community है वहाँ की, वो बोलेगी, वो मेरे को अर्धनारीश्वरी के बारे में बताती है, क्या रे तुम्हारे तो धर्म में ही है, right? So it works both ways, because, and I think in India, we always make this mistake of looking at globalization as something that is happening to us instead of something that we are a part of. हम भी हमारा कल्चर बाहर लेके जा रहे हैं ना, हमारे कल्चर से भी वहां पे इम्पैक्ट पड़ रहा है ना. न्यू जर्सी में हर दूसरे लेफ्ट टर्न पे एक इंडियन रेस्टोरेंट है, राइट? So it works both ways. It's not like something that is being done to us. I think we need to kind of come out or break out of that slavery mindset from colonization and start realizing that we do have agency and we have created change. And with regards to gender diversity, it has been a two-way road, because we do have cultural, historical, artistic contexts that prove that gender diversity beyond binaries has existed in India for ages, which is something that a lot of quote unquote Abrahamical cultures don't have. And so I wouldn't say that we have become more gender diverse after, white influence. I think we've just learned to talk about it, or we finally have the language for it. Because to date, I don't have the language for non-binary in Hindi. मैं कैसे समझाऊं किसी like स्कूल के बच्चे को कि non-binary क्या होता है हिंदी में, जिसको इंग्लिश नहीं आती. और यहाँ पे भी हम language की बात कर रहे हैं. We're talking about preserving languages and all of this, but all of us have only spoken in English. हमने ना हिंदी में बात करी है ना मराठी में बात करी है. एक दो words यहाँ वहाँ बस. तो वही बात है कि आप you got to walk the talk, yeah. Just that.
Yes, ma'am, as you rightly said, that maybe it existed from the history and it's still existing, but people don't want to accept it and they don't want to acknowledge it. The acknowledgement is not there.
I think in India, the thing is that we've never had these conversations openly on public forums, on streets, on chai ka tapris. नहीं हुई है वो बातें. At least अब वो बातें हो रही हैं, right? At least अब मैं चाय के टपरी में अपने कॉलेज में खड़े होके बोल सकती हूँ कि हाँ मैं नॉन बाइनरी हूँ. तो बातें होना शुरू हो रही हैं. And with regards to like not wanting to accept things, कब कब तक नहीं accept करोगे? मतलब there कभी तो you will have to come into the actual world, right? You can't keep living in your privileged bubbles. Someday they will break. Either you break them or your next generation will break them for you. And that's your decision. If you wanted to be prepared for your child maybe being gay, or your child maybe being non-binary, or your child maybe being trans, and like know that you have the information to protect your child and take care of your child, or do you want to just shut your eyes and be like, nahi, 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 aisa kuch nahi hota, aisa kuch nahi hota, and then tomorrow have a child who becomes excruciatingly traumatized and suffers and finds it really difficult to fit into society? That's a decision every individual has to take. And you can't, what is that? There's an idiom, right? You can take the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. Something like that. That.
Also, ma'am, can we see this gender diversity in social aspect? We have seen it, but how does it affect the organizational culture also, which we have seen many times across newspapers or in the news channel, that how gender diversity is being affecting the organizational culture also? Can you throw some light on this topic?
Sure. Before I do that, I have to give a trigger warning. I am going to be talking about sexual abuse in this little section. If anybody is going to be triggered, maybe mute me for a while. I'll do like a thumbs up once I'm done so that you can like unmute. But yeah, okay. Just in case you need that, I'm going to count to 5 before I start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Okay. So gender diversity within organizational structures, we're still struggling to get even like enough women into the workforce, or get them paid enough, or make sure that they're safe enough that they're not getting molested by their bosses every day, that there's not like a Me Too post about everyone every other day. Like, who can I trust, right? And sure, we've created Vishaka committees and we've created posh acts and all of that, but the implementation of it is sorely lacking, to the extent that there are people who sit on Vishaka committees that I've sat down to have conversations with, and they've like actually said, yaar, ye aadhi ladkiyan to jhooti bol rahi hoti hain. And these are women. It's not like it's a man. Like if it was a man, I could let it go, be like, okay, fine, you're a man, whatever. But these are women. That's the level of internalization of patriarchy in our country. And that is active work that we have to do as individuals to break that generational internalization of patriarchy. And until we do that, it is not going to be possible to have a society or an organization that is truly gender diverse. There are a lot of organizations definitely that are doing amazing work with regards to gender diversity, right? A couple that I would love to mention would be Zomato. They have period leaves. I'm sure like 5 people behind the screens right now, when I said period, were like, yo, why is she talking about that? But yes, women menstruate, individuals menstruate, and they need a leave, because research has actually shown that menstruation, the cramps that we deal with during menstruation, the pain level is the same as a heart attack. So all menstruators deal with 3 to 4 days of heart attack level of pain every month. I think we deserve a fucking holiday for that. I'm so sorry for abusing, but yeah, like, and it's amazing that Zomato gives people that, right? Or if I look at an organization like Trell, their marketing department is primarily made up of like cis women, which is great. They allow you to take mental health days, which is amazing, right? So it's not that organizations aren't working towards gender inclusivity or gender diversity. They are. It's just a matter of fact that there is not enough research on what it takes to create a safe working environment for a woman, a non-binary person, or a trans person. There is not enough research on it because we didn't talk about it, because people other than cis male people only entered the workforce like what, 100 years ago? Nothing more than that. I know there was a history teacher here some time ago. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember this, but yeah, like whenever the suffragettes movement happened, right, which I guess was about 150 years ago, which is nothing in comparison to, the 2000 years at least that, men have been in the workforce. And it's also important to note that men are the ones who've created these rules. who've created these organizations, who've created these organizational structures, and they don't have the same lived experience of a woman or a non-binary person or a trans person. And therefore, they are not capable of creating the right kind of affirmative actions to make workplaces safe for women or non-binary people or trans people, or in general, just non-men. So while organizations are definitely working towards gender diversity, I believe that there is a lot of education that is lacking in being able to truly create that, wherein nobody is actually unintentionally or intentionally harmed. You're on mute.
Yes, ma'am, you truly said all the correct things, and I believe the awareness should be there, and hope things would get better. And thank you for actually talking about such a taboo topic, which was never discussed, especially at the academic or educational level. Thank you, ma'am.
Of course.
Now we'll move on again to Mohsina ma'am. Are you there?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I'd like to ask you for the second question. What are the elements of food diversity in India and how to sustain them? From your previous topic, as you said that there are some elements. Now, what are those elements and how to sustain them?
See, first of all, India is a very vast country and we have diverse climate from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Bengal to Gujarat, Western India. So that is the first basis of our food diversity, because whatever climate is there and the type of soil which is available for cultivation determines what is going to be the base of your food, what is going to be foundation of your diet. Okay, so that is the first diversity we see. So you say that in North India, or especially if you start from Kashmir, then in Kashmir they eat rice. When you come to Punjab and Uttar Pradesh, wheat or the rotis are their staple food. When we go to South, again rice dominates. Okay, so that is the first diversity we see, and which is the basis of the food culture of particular region, first of all. Then this is nature, because it is a climate, it is a land, it is a local ecology, so it is nature. Then comes the culture, and here religion plays an important role in determining the food diversity. Here also we have so many religion which has been practiced by Indians. So we have our Hindu religion. Within Hindu religion also, there are so many subgroups, sects are there. So the food of the Shaivas will be different from the food of the Vaishnavas. Okay, so that is also there, which we don't consider because we don't know details of it. We always believe that all Hindus eat same, all Hindus have similar approach toward food. It is not so. We need to go into detail of the religious beliefs and practices also to understand the diversity in food habit of different groups. Then the major religious group like Christianity and Islam and the Parsis, Zoroastrians, they're also there. So they also brought their own food ethos introduced in India that also has contributed towards the diversity. So food, what to be eaten, what is prohibited, what is taboo, is determined by your religious beliefs and practices. Okay, and then you also have in India, we have different caste and communities, and caste wise also there is a food diversity. Though as I just said, the region which is the foundation for the first diversity, within the region also, because of the religion, there will be a more diversity, there will be interdiversity and caste also. The people, for example, I will give you example from Maharashtra because I'm familiar with Maharashtra. So I will give you the example from Maharashtra. So in Maharashtra, we have Brahmin community, we have Marathas, we have CKPs or Chandravamshiya Kayastha Prabhus, then we have Shepherds, Dhangar community. The basic food which they use is determined by from which region they come, but how they cook it and what are the cultural significances attached to that food is determined by their caste. Okay, so in here I'm not talking about caste, and I'm not saying that the caste is something good, and from not that point of view, I'm not talking from sociological point of view. I'm talking here from the food point of view. A very well-known Marathi author, Durga Bhagwat. She's social activist also. Those who study Marathi literature know about her because she has been she has also been the president of Sahitya Sammelan or the literary conference, and she has been very firebrand lady, and she was also interested in food. She has documented food of the Adivasi community, tribal communities, and she has written very detailed about different recipes. And this particular statement of her, I really like. And she is being very liberal. She did not believe in caste system or anything. But she said that one should preserve the caste diversities which are reflected in food, because that is also an identity of that particular group. Though, and that even I believe in, because being a food researcher, I would like to see into this diversity and understand it, what is the reason behind it. So the caste and communities also have their particular food style, dietary practices, and cultural significances attached to those practices. And being a historian and being a researcher, I'm very much fascinated with this aspect, the cultural aspect. So these are the basic elements of food diversities in India. When we talk about, just 2 days ago, there we had a lecture from of one Australian food historian, and she was talking about Indian food and present Indian food, and she said that you have so much diversities, whereas in Australia, across Australia, which is so vast, there is no such diversity exist. What will be eaten by a Australian in one particular region will be eaten by other in some other region also. Whereas in India, the food of the Kashmiri and the food of Tamilian will be vastly different. It will be diverse. But again, the undercurrent of those food or the underline will be the belief towards the food, that they do not consider food just as a material which sustain us biologically, but we believe that it also helps in our spiritual growth. Okay, every religion in India, every group in India do not look at food only as carbohydrates or vitamins or protein or fat. For them, it goes beyond it. It talks about personal, interpersonal relation. It talks about spiritualism and all those aspects. And therefore, in spite of this diversity, what Nehru has said, that this is, we also see the unity in diversity in the matter of food as well. I hope I had answered your question.
Yes, ma'am, it's very clear now. Ma'am, another question I had in my mind is why always we might have heard like Northeastern food culture is very ethnic. Like, what is different about their food culture?
I'm not very familiar with the food culture of North Indian. And I think it is very sad that we are not very familiar with
region.
Yeah, because as I'm not very familiar with their food culture, so I won't be able to comment much on it. But now I think gradually, in some part of India, their food culture is being introduced. And if you remember, there was one movie also on North Indian food. Okay, when they wanted to cook their particular dish and how they had to struggle for it. That thing I think we need to change. We must understand that that is their food. It may be different from us, but it is their food, and we should appreciate it. That they means if they want to cook it, then we should support them and we should allow them to cook. But then this particular aspect now in present times is very debatable and also controversial, because now we have started believing in that food of one particular group is the best and others is not so good. The choices which they have made is wrong, and therefore they should stop them. They should be banned from eating that type of food. I do not believe in it, as I just not told you that the food habit is determined by many things. There are many components which determines our food habit. First, try to understand it. Why it has been in their diet. Why that particular food has been in their diet. And then, because it is wrong for you, does not mean that it should be banned. We talk about democracy. Do we practice democracy? No. And food has now come into the forefront of this crisis of the democracy which we are facing. So some are now dictating what others will eat. And on what basis they are dictating? They are dictating on the basis of their political power and also on their economic power. Okay? Because we have finances in our hand, we are politically and economically powerful, and therefore we will tell you what you should eat. That is eroding our diversity. I think one must understand that each work should be allowed, as in the matter of gender, as in the matter of language. This is also the choice which person should be allowed to make. It should not be forced on anyone. One should not say that because my type of food is good, everyone should eat it. Your type of food is bad. Okay? No. But understand why that particular food habit has developed and then accept it, respect it. And this is the need of the time. And you youngsters who are sitting in the audience, who are going in the world, and when someone tells you, no, this is bad food, and therefore it should be bad, and you should ask that person in what way it is bad, why it is bad, and for whom it is bad. And then you should accept it, whether you want to eat it or not. Just don't go and don't follow the herd mentality. Okay, I will advise you to respect the diversity of India in all the matters and enjoy it. And when just now when Tanushri was talking about gender and gender diversity, now at present time, everything we trace to our ancient past. Everything in ancient time is good. But in ancient time also, gender diversity was there and accepted. All of you know about Mahabharata. But do you know the Bruhannada, Arjun, who has become Bruhannada, when they were in the court of Virat, King Virat of Viratnagar? So you cannot say that only up to this part I'm going to believe in my ancient past. What is not suitable to me, I'm not going to be. There is very much, there are too many things I could talk on this issue, but diversity, especially in country like India, one should accept and respect. Respecting other is very, very important.
Mahasina
Yes.
ma'am, with your consent, could I possibly comment?
Yes,
on,
yes, sure.
Thank you so much. Sorry, go ahead. You had to say something?
No. If you could throw more light on Northeastern food.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going.
And my knowledge of Northeastern food is very, very minuscule, you can say.
Right. I would definitely say mine is not expansive either. However, I have had the fortune of traveling there and do have like college friends from there. And we have had this conversation because I'm a massive foodie. So basically the thing is that when you look at the Northeast, right, as quote unquote mainlanders, we look at it as one whole singularity, whereas it's not. even within a singular quote unquote state, there are multiple tribes and multiple different cultures and multiple different cultural practices or food practices even, right? And when any place is that diverse, it becomes very difficult to bring that conversation into the mainstream, especially when mainlanders like us have constantly looked down upon their way of living itself. But we love our momos, right? And we love the thukpa, and we will have that, and we will talk as if it is our own. But when it comes to, you know, some of their more peculiar food eating habits, like eating maybe beef or pork or dogs or cats or other things that mainlanders don't eat, we will very quickly shun them for it. And if any individual trying to bring their culture into a place where, you know, their culture is the quote unquote odd one out, is going to get shunned, it becomes very difficult for them to continue that conversation even if they want to, right? So I think that if we want to talk about food diversity with regards to the Northeast, we need to start by first calling it the Northeast in its entirety, right? Let's call it what it is. You want to talk about Assam, let's talk about Assam. You want to talk about Nagaland, let's talk about Nagaland. You want to talk about Meghalaya, let's talk about Meghalaya. But stop painting it with one brush, because as long as we keep doing that, we are never going to be able to even get to the point of understanding the food habits of the dominant people there, let alone the actual masses of that place. So I think that is like a slight mindset change that we all have to make to be able to kind of look into that more, and learn more, and just a little more tolerant, I guess, right? In terms of individualistic choices, and that is where like diversity is rooted, right? As long as you find a way to be a little more respectful and a little more tolerant, diversity will flourish on its own. It's just that we're
Yes.
very intolerant as a people.
No, and I would like to add one more thing over here. Northeast is like very far away from us. Within Maharashtra, again, I will talk about Maharashtra. Within Maharashtra also, do we know anything about the tribal food? Do we know anything about Dalit food? Now, in recent times, one cookbook on Dalit food has come into market, that is in Marathi. And that has opened our eyes what type of food choices they had to make, because we had imposed those choices on them. Okay, so now things are improving because people are now becoming aware of this diversity, and they started talking about it. They are taking pride in their own diversity. I think that is very important.
Yes, ma'am, very true. As Mohsina ma'am and Tanushri ma'am both have cleared all our doubts about it. And thank you, Tanushri ma'am, also for clearing on the northeastern part. And according to what Mohsina ma'am said, like there has to be certain recognition and freedom to choose our own food. Now, I was just thinking on that part, like, do we have to in the future conduct or construct any amendments related to food in the constitution, right to have food? Anyway, so it was really great discussion. Now,
It actually
again,
already exists now, by the way. Sorry. But the right to choice covers your right to choice of food. So it's already there. It's just a matter that we currently, and I'm so sorry if I'm going to get cancelled for this, but we currently have a government that refuses to adhere to the constitution, and there's not much we can do about that.
Yes, I also had tried to show it to you, not directly and openly, because this is the online platform has its own issues. So, but what I was trying to say is similar to what Tanushri has just now mentioned.
I'm okay with going to jail.
Yes, sir, it's cleared, and we surely got the message that you both have to share with us. Now, my next question is to Lopamudra ma'am. Ma'am, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry.
Okay. Ma'am, as you mentioned in your earlier context, I would like to ask you, like, why there are some languages that are very popular in India while others are not that popular? Like, why there is this huge difference?
First of all, if we talk about why certain languages are popular and why certain languages are not popular, I think even you can give that answer right over here right now. As Tanushri mentioned, you're speaking in English, right? So there's a dominance about language in the sense like there are majority of people who understand a particular language at one go. So why that is happening? One is, of course, like we had a colonial rule which overpowered certain areas. Second, when we talk about languages, like for example, livelihood patterns of people. When they lose out on the livelihood patterns, they migrate, right? So first the migration of the language happens, because when they're migrating to a different place, then they lose out on their original language and they try to adapt the language which is spoken over there. And slowly, so first the migration of language, then the migration of the space, all those things happening, and then the language slowly dies. And they go ahead and start speaking the language which is used in that particular place. Another is, of course, when we talk about language and one language being more dominant, sometimes, they think that this language is to avoid any kind of social discrimination. Even they go ahead and try to avoid their language and go ahead and pick up another language. Even that happens. So there are reasons, but just because of time limit, I'm just putting it across that these are somewhere 2-3 very important reasons where they go ahead and some languages become dominant, is of course us to get marginalized. And of course, when the number of speakers reduce, then the language becomes marginalized, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Now, ma'am, I would like to ask you another question. During Sangeeta ma'am was giving your introduction, she said that you are a performing artist. So as a performing artist, do you think that language matters in popularizing that particular art? Does it play an important role over there?
Of course, because if you talk about Bhojpuri language was on the verge of almost, it was on the verge of dying, okay? But because of when movies started, when they started having movies in Bhojpuri language, and of course, art, when they were discussed in theaters and when it was used and people started to watch that and they understood that and then became popular, that's how the language also gained momentum. So performances in the traditional, so when we have our storytelling performances, the more we get traditional artists and they speak in they share stories in their languages, and and there is an interpreter. So of course, people who listen to it, who know the language, they develop a kind of a connect, and slowly other people also say that, oh, this language is getting some kind of recognition and I know the language, and let me go ahead and share a story or perform something, and of course there'll be someone who would understand that and recognize it. And that's how a small ripple can create more, little bit of recognition towards that language, will create the other person or other artists to come over and share, and that's how the language can be spoken more or discussed more, or a buzz is buzz is created around the language. That is what we are talking about, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for such wonderful insight. We really understood the meaning and the medium of language. Now I would like to move towards Tanushri ma'am. Tanushri ma'am.
Yeah, tell me.
Ma'am, my last question would be like how movies portray or important role in gender diversity, because we are seen from the
I like that you saw that I got triggered. Okay, sorry, but please complete your question. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, like how when we talk about the Indian history, like from the times movies started, they are playing a very important role in portraying the gender diversity, like how specific gender should be. So can you explain more how is it playing an important role and how will it play important role in the future? Will there be changes or no?
First, let's deconstruct this entire idea that a gender should be a certain way, right? Stop. Because that is where it starts, right? If you stick to gender roles, or if you stick to gender stereotypes, or you think that a gender should be a certain way, you're going to continue that oppression. Willingly or unwillingly. I'm not saying कि आप जानबूझ के कर रहे हो, वो होगा, आपके कंट्रोल में नहीं है वो, जब तक आप वो लैंग्वेज या वो थॉट प्रोसेस अनलर्न नहीं कर लेते, राइट? एंड इट्स वेरी सिंपल, राइट? जैसे कि एक कल्चर अगर हम देखें तो वो कहता है कि औरत को घर पे रहना चाहिए, किचन में रहना चाहिए, सूट साड़ी सलवार पहनना चाहिए और कुछ नहीं पहनना चाहिए. दूसरा कल्चर कहता है कि औरत को घर पे भी रहना चाहिए, किचन भी करना चाहिए, ऑफिस भी जाना चाहिए, बच्चे भी संभालने चाहिए, सब कुछ करे और सब कुछ करते हुए उसको हॉट दिखना चाहिए, right? Those are the two like kind of stereotypical boxes that have been created for women in our country. So we need to break that concept that that box needs to exist itself. It doesn't. A woman can choose to do whatever she wants to do. A man can choose to do whatever they want to do. As long as your actions are not causing active harm to an individual, right? For example, someone could get very offended that as someone who was born as a woman, I have like a short haircut with like a buzz and everything, right? But is this causing any active harm to anybody? No, right? But it's bringing me joy. So it's a matter of understanding that कि जो gender roles हैं, चाहे हमें movies से दिख रहे हैं वो, या family से मिल रहे हैं, wherever we're getting them from. It's a matter of understanding why are we against this idea? Why are there so many feminists in India that say okay, women should not cook? Women can cook if they want to. The entire point of feminism or gender diversity is that a person should be allowed to do what they want to do regardless of their gender identity, right? To break that box. Now, when we come to talking about movies, I believe truly and wholeheartedly that movies have done more damage than good. And I truly and wholeheartedly believe that for the foreseeable future, they will continue to do more damage than good. We have movies like, I believe it's called Raja Ki Aayegi Barat, where a woman gets assaulted and then has to go to court and relive the assault in a very, very nasty manner. And the justice that she gets is that she has to marry the person who assaulted her. Or we have a movie like Chandigarh Kare Aashiki right now, where this person beats up a trans person and acts like it's not a big deal. That's extreme violence that was shown. And it's been portrayed as though it's love, which is even more scarier, right? Because then it's kind of propagating the cycles of domestic violence that a lot of us have lived through. Or even if we look at what was the other Ayushmann Khurrana movie about being gay, that was also really weird. It propagated really negative stereotypes about people who come from a gender diverse space, right? So I wholeheartedly believe that movies will continue to do a lot more damage than good. Sure, we'll have like the one-off Pink that comes out every once in 5-6 years. But let's be realistic. How much of India actually watched Pink? Versus how much of India watched Raja Ki Aayegi Barat or Chandigarh Kare Aashiki, right? So it's not that good movies don't exist. They do. It's just that they're not palatable to our demographic. And therefore, the movies that cause more active harm end up being the ones that are watched more often, right? Even if we look at, let's move away from movies, let's look at TV, which is far more accessible, right? At least हर गांव में आज एक टीवी तो है जहां सब लोग जाके शाम को मिलके चाय पीते हुए टीवी देखते हैं. टीवी पे क्या देखते हैं हम? कपिल शर्मा का शो देखते हैं. कपिल शर्मा के शो में हम क्या देखते हैं कि लड़के लड़की बन के मजाक उड़ा रहे हैं. सो आपने क्या किया उसमें? इफेक्टिवली आपने मेरी जेंडर आइडेंटिटी को एक जोक बना दिया है और पूरा इंडिया उस पर हंस रहा है फैमिलीज में बैठ के. बट कल को इफ आई गो इनटू the same family function wearing a pantsuit, or if my partner goes into the same family function wearing a sari, we are going to be laughed at because they will think we are a joke. Whereas we're not a joke, we're just expressing ourselves the way that we want to, the way that we feel comfortable. But media as a whole has made our existence into a joke in India. And I don't see that changing anytime soon, unfortunately.
Yes, ma'am. As you said, I believe movies can be really a powerful medium. And if we use it effectively and wisely, it can really be a good medium for awareness. So it's a
Okay,
time. Yes. So thank you so much to all the panelists. Now I would like to hand over to my convener of the symposium, Dr. Sangeeta ma'am. Thank you so much.
Actually, I would like to thank all the panelists. It was a wonderful discussion, and I hope that all our students have been benefited a lot. And I'm quite hopeful that we will definitely meet offline, specifically Mohsina Mokadam Madam and Lopamudra Mohanty. They are placed in Mumbai, and I would like to listen more from Tanishri. And definitely, I will invite you for more session online. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It was a true pleasure to be able to speak so honestly and openly. It's very rare that these spaces get created. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sangeeta, and thank you the entire team for the inviting.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining with us. We conclude our session for today. Hope you are enlightened with our great speakers and you got a lot of good knowledge about the taboo topics, also the topics which were we discussed, but we were not having a deep knowledge about it. After this session, we surely are inspired and motivated with all the great ideas given by our panelists. So I conclude this session. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a nice day.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.